Well, the final U.S. troops have left Afghanistan. This is the first time in 20 years the U.S. is no longer on the ground there. President Biden facing backlash after the military revealed there are between 100 and 200 Americans left behind because they could not get to the airport. The president is set to address the nation this afternoon. Massachusetts Congressman Jake Auchincloss is a Marine veteran who served in Afghanistan. He now joins us live this morning to discuss the end of America's longest war. And Congressman, good morning. Great to see you this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, our pleasure. You bet. You recently wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post that leaving Afghanistan, it was the right choice. A lot of Gold Star families, they're saying that they didn't want the U.S. to leave. The optics, they don't look great. We've been seeing video of the Taliban this morning celebrating at the airport, claiming victory. Why do you think it was the right choice for the U.S. to finally leave Afghanistan?
I'm struck by the image that U.S. Central Command released this morning of that last U.S. soldier to depart Afghanistan. That wasn't a private or a lieutenant. That was the commanding general of 82nd Airborne. He did a final patrol of the airfield, ensured all soldiers and equipment was accounted for, and then departed. And similarly, the U.S. ambassador was the last foreign or civil service officer to leave Afghanistan. He folded the U.S. flag properly, put it against his heart, and got on that airplane. Those two gentlemen demonstrated personal accountability to a mission in an era of grandstanding and virtue signaling. And that is the same personal accountability that President Joe Biden demonstrated when he took office. For 3 previous administrations, commanders-in-chief had been passing the buck on this war. The buck stopped with Joe Biden. He said, we cannot win this counterinsurgency. I cannot justify the sacrifice of U.S. service members any longer, and it's time for Afghans to fight for Afghanistan.
What about the way the U.S. left Afghanistan? The Pentagon said the U.S. left hundreds of pieces of military throughout the country, including rocket launchers, tanks, and helicopters. Congressman, why did we have to leave so hastily, and how much of a danger does that pose to the U.S. now?
The United States was winding down a 20-year counterinsurgency in a country that's known as the graveyard of empires. It was always going to be messy. The critical point is that we evacuated 120,000 people in the most sophisticated airlift in history. That includes more than 100,000 Afghans who now have a chance at a better life, and the substantial majority of Americans who were there. This administration is committed to continuing those evacuations through diplomatic, economic, and humanitarian leverage.
What about the State Department said about 100, maybe up to 200 Americans left behind because they couldn't get to the airport in Kabul. It was just too dangerous for them. What can you do as a member of Congress to help get those Americans out?
We're going to hold this administration to account on 2 fronts. The first is counterterrorism. People may remember that this war in Afghanistan began as a counterterrorism mission before it mutated under President Bush into a counterinsurgency boondoggle. We need to continue ensuring that Afghanistan cannot be a base of operations by which terrorists can strike the U.S. homeland, and I will, along with my colleagues, hold the administration to account for that over-the-horizon CT capability. Second, we need to continue to evacuate Americans and Afghan allies. The Taliban have committed publicly and privately that they will allow access to the airport. We don't trust them. But diplomacy is negotiation without trust, and we're going to continue to use the leverage we have, including financial, including humanitarian aid, including international recognition, to hold the Taliban to account and to continue to evacuate those final small number of Americans.
Congressman, how much does it concern you that some of the equipment that was left behind is now in the hands of the Taliban? We saw them this morning on the airport with machine guns and different, tanks and stuff, Humvees. How much does it concern you that they can use U.S. equipment, perhaps against us or, our allies?
It really depends on the type of equipment and in whose hands it ended up. The most serious breaches would be if surface-to-air capabilities ended up in the hands of ISIS-K. Really sophisticated military equipment, 1, was likely spiked by the U.S. military if we were leaving it behind, and 2, it's going to be very challenging for the Taliban or ISIS-K to maintain that equipment. I mean, 99% of military hardware is about the maintenance and the logistics, not about the operation. But surface-to-air capabilities in the hands of ISIS-K would be a serious breach and an area where we would need an after action and an investigation to understand what went wrong for sure. And indeed, Congress needs to launch an investigation on the entire 20-year conduct of this war. We need to understand from invasion through withdrawal how U.S. national security officials continued to sink time, troops, and treasure into a counterinsurgency that couldn't succeed.
All right, Congressman Jake Auchincloss taking time this morning to talk to us about the end of the Afghan war, the U.S. Troops coming home, the final general leaving the airport this morning. Congressman, really appreciate your insight. It was good talking to you. Thank you.
You as well.